Yeah. Okay. Let's try. Okay, I have recorded this call.
Okay, lovely. Um, so Linton, just two more questions I have. And I know that it's not a question. You can take your time and help me with the callback and internal
Yeah, I have
control.
the update already. So I'm about to update, but I'm waiting until you give me a chance to speak. So
Okay,
I have for the internal control, but the internal control will be split into two. Internal
okay,
control for finance and internal control for HR.
okay, right.
So what I'm thinking is rather than I have like one list is finance, and
Mm,
then inside is internal control and callback, and then later in HR, internal
mm,
control for HR. So may I separate the list, become like
yes,
finance, HR, and then internal control and callback?
absolutely. That works.
Okay, all right, I'll do that. And then for the Arab requirement, I will check with the finance, and I actually already talked with Emmanuel, but also from finance need to check, and we
Okay.
will get back to you. May I know when is the deadline for having this check? Because I think
Um,
Emmanuel is quite busy. Hmm.
as long as you take maybe by around early next week, I'll tell you why. Because we've already initiated the request to the hiring team to start sourcing Arab language resources. Now, while they are doing that, the sooner we actually give them any change of scope, it would be good. However, we would validate the assumptions during the process definition workshop. So anytime by around mid of next week, you can get me a validation of Arab resources, both for finance and both for HRO. I think that will give me sufficient time to go back to the hiring team.
Okay, sure. I'll try. I'll do my best before end of this week, or maybe even today. So I think it's yeah.
Mm,
Okay. Anything else that you want to ask? So I have also chat with Olivier asking for
but
the CARM access, but he's not replying yet. So once he reply,
mhm,
then I will let you know.
mhm. Okay, super. Thank you for that. And what I will do is that since you have mentioned about a 1 week extension of the PD phase in July, that's going to be between 7th and 11th. I just made a note of it. I'll formalize that. And there is a request from the Infosys team, and we can maybe get it revalidated next week. For GL, currently we have 4 weeks of PD workshop for all the towers, including GL. There is a request for GL instead of 4. They would actually anticipate a longer duration of PD, process definition workshop, because this includes more topics, more mature items. I've seen you've already extended by a week till 11th of July. We might come back to you with the request of pushing it out by another 1 or 2 weeks, so that month end is also covered, closing, and we give sufficient time for covering all the topics. So I'll come back to you on that with a formal note.
Punit.
Lintan, maybe
Mm.
because GL is so complex, maybe worth splitting this into fixed assets, intercompany, and so on. Yeah, because there are things that we could.
Interco split already. And
Okay.
GL also already split. So line 7 is for GL. Do not see the column B, because column B is Infosys one. The allocate one is column C.
Okay. So within R2R, maybe
Fixed
just
asset.
given the complexity, maybe splitting it further.
Okay, can.
Yeah, even for I think O2C, OTC you've already done, you've split it
Yeah, billing
into,
and cash app. Hmm.
yeah, okay. So maybe just given complexity or R2R, maybe worth splitting, and the timelines could then end up becoming different.
Okay, sure. I'll check with the team.
Puneet, it's a great point. In fact, within the GL, like while we have general ledger, we have intercompany. We, apart from treasury, we also spot that there is a tax element to it. And we have a separate domain expert who's going to be doing the workshop on tax. Now, here I can see only treasury, which is mentioned. We would then need a confirmation for treasury. Would it be the person who is doing JAO, Pereira, and Aluvia, would they be covering both tax and treasury? Or if it's only treasury, who would be covering from a tax perspective?
No, no, tax is with the GL. So in a liquid tax, basically statutory reporting is prepared by the GL team. There's no
Okay.
split.
So
So
GL would
R2R,
include tax. Okay.
yeah, R2R is basically reporting for the management reporting, IRIS, and also for the statutory reporting.
Got it. Clear. Then you would have treasury, you would have intercompany, and of course,
Mhm.
internal control and callback. I'm aware of it.
Yes, I
Okay.
do have. Mhm. So for fixed asset, I'm going to check and I'll get back to you on that part.
Just out of curiosity, Lintang,
Mm. Yes, Puneet.
callback is just, can you explain what that activity is?
Uh, Callback, the activities, from my understanding, is a callback customer for
I
as part of the. Mm,
Okay,
so
then that's something. The reason I asked that is closing will be irrelevant to callback, right? It's nothing to do with closing. It's customer master data, right?
yeah. Customer master data, or is a collection for
No, just
callback
check.
to the.
Just
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
check.
just
the
check.
callback. So we have checked the contract, the existing solution for callback. There are three line items. Two of them that falls into P2P or the AP processing. One is the
AP.
modification bank detail of a vendor and a bank
Mm-hmm.
detail confirmation for creation of a vendor. And the third
Mm-hmm.
one falls under O2C, that is confirmation bank detail of customer for refunds. These are the three high level items that is being listed under callback. Two under P2P,
Okay,
one under O2C.
okay. So
Okay.
so unlikely to get impacted because of closing. None of it is time critical during closing period. These are master data kind of setups, right? It it may be worth, when closing period is happening, unless these people are, deviating from their day-to-day work to support the team for closing, maybe that can be done during closing period. So we don't put a stop to everything.
Yeah, I'll check. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about, but I think for callback, like in APAC, they have a closing period as well. Or, but I will check for IMEI.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we are the same. Okay. I take a note already also, Shonak. So modification bank detail of a vendor, bank detail confirmation, and the O2C.
I mean, ideally, all this should be done well before financial closing.
Yeah.
This should, I mean, the timelines for this will be much more earlier than closing so that you don't impact closing.
Yeah. And normally for the callback, they also do for the employee master data. Whenever there is like a hiring or dehiring, they're doing it for activation and deactivation.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So
For the callback, Shonak, do you have mobile? You have a phone line, right? Or in India will be to have.
no, no. So this transition doesn't have any voice solution. By that I mean that we are not implementing any voice solution wherein I would have the ability to pick up the phone and make that call. Uh, that's the solution that we have, including the collections of the O2C.
Sorry, I don't get you. So basically, you have a phone desk for you to have a phone call to the
No,
vendor or to the customer, or
no,
you don't have it.
we don't have that baked into the solution. No voice solution that has been put
Then
in.
how are you going
Yeah.
to process for the callback? Because for example, I just give an example of the KL because I know that. So we have like a phone desk for having a call to the customer and to the vendor.
Mhm. I understand that. We've checked the current scope, and that's something we would like to validate during the process definition workshop, so that if there is going to be a voice solution, which is right now not part of the solution, and I will go back and check with Ritu, who was in the due diligence event. I would then we would then need to factor that. But as of now, as is, we don't have a voice solution set up. Puneet, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think worth checking that, Shaunak, is by definition that process requires voice. Yeah, it's
Got
calling
it.
back somebody to confirm something.
Absolutely. I'll pick this one up right after the call.
Yeah, and if it's with customers and vendors, it might need language also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also phone lines, whether it'll be, if it's an India number calling, most likely nobody's going to pick it up, right? It's we'll have to do the change management around it to see uh, which number should flash when you call somebody.
Okay. Okay. I made a note of it.
And I'm sorry, Lintang, did you also mention for O2C for collections also this callback is going to be required?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a confirmation bank detail of customer of refunds, the one that shown up, just copy paste from the
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
agreement.
Yeah.
Mm.
So let's be clear. It is not for collections. It's to verify customer details.
Customer bank.
Yeah.
Clear. Very clear.
Yeah.
Jayasudha has
Thank you.
raised her hand. Jaya, you're on mute if you're speaking.
I think he's already asking the question and just forgot to turn off the.
Yes, even I had the
Oh,
same
you
question,
have.
Shaunak,
Okay.
with respect to
Okay.
collections.
Hmm. Okay. I think Puneet just responded to that.
So, it is, yeah, I'm sorry.
So
Can I go ahead with the question? Okay,
Please go ahead.
for collections, you're telling, yes, we need the calling facility to call the customers.
Well, as we mentioned, Jaya, we are going to check that with Ritu in terms of aligning with the original solution, and then we'll revert to Air Liquid on that. And we will use the
And
process
is it going to be the,
workshop to validate.
okay.
sorry, I don't know if there's a question there or we're just overhearing.
Yeah, Puneet, we would check with Jaya, and we'll ensure that the question is also getting highlighted.
So just 2 points, Shaunak, when you're checking is
Hmm.
callback. Uh, by definition, I think we'll need phone access or voice access, but for a different purpose, which is for lack of a better word, looking at master data, right? Is making sure the account numbers are correct and stuff like that. It may be also worth looking at the collections process, whether there is voice required there also. It may not be part of a callback process, but in collections, there may be times that the customer has to be called directly. It may be worth checking the scope of services, whether voice was included in that also.
Noted. But overall, I understand wherever it would cut through a possibility about interacting over a phone call, we would go back and check with the current assumption, ensure that we are also calling it out when we have the actual workshop, so that currently where we do not have a voice solution getting implemented, and with a solution I am talking about a phone line and what is the most realistic number that needs to really flash, we would then capture those requirements and ensure those are in place before we actually go live, and is part of the overall knowledge transfer. And I think it's a great starting point. This gives us the time to go back and check with the solution and validate that during the 4 weeks of process definition workshop. I'll put that as an action. Just the way I think a week or two back we had an action to ensure covering language and the countries, because in short, Puneet, you have excellently well highlighted the fact that any work that's happening in Lisbon is coming over here. So we'll revalidate all of those assumptions.
Lintang, it may be worth us also just checking the scope of services or the SLA
Yeah,
to see what we said.
I have
Because
started.
Really, I have
Yep.
started. Yep.
So I'm looking for the
I'm looking for
callback.
the
It might be
callback. It
inbound
might
and
be inbound
outbound,
and outbound,
but yeah, I
but
need to check
yeah, I
the
need to check
SLA.
the.
okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In Lintang, sorry, just Shanak, sorry to interrupt. Lintang may be worth checking. Is there any other process which we're missing out but voice is required? Because it may be normal for Air Liquide to have voice, as in the process, but for Infosys, they might have wanted more clarity.
Okay.
Okay.
But normally for the
But normally
callback,
for the
you need to
callback,
have a
you
voice.
need to have a voice.
I mean, by
Yeah,
definition,
callback
it's
by
a callback.
definition. Yeah, yeah. Callback by definition is there, but
Yeah.
the sometimes there are assumptions being made, and we need to clarify those.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
will. I
we
will.
will. I will. Okay.
Okay.
I do.
I do.
I do have a hard stop in next 1 minute. I know we've secured this time for an hour. I think Puneet, you had certain feedback uh, the hiring progress and the key risk issues and all that. I'm going to be sending out the document right after this call. Not immediately after this call, give me a bit of time and I'm going to be sending out the presentation. And for the benefit of all the users, I'll send out the PDF copy of it. But right now, I think we are in a good spot with the overall PD preparedness. Um, we will have our kickoff next Tuesday, and post that when we have the time availability of the rest of the members, and I'll send you a snapshot of a change comms guideline that and I'm trying to procure as a lessons learned from other engagements. I'll send that across. I think from next week we can spend more time looking into the other areas of the project with the PD phase coming through as well in some time. And I'm just seeing that there is a message that's being sent by Jayasudha. So yes, our step one, we will go and cross check internally with Ritu. We will use the process definition workshop to ensure that we have all the countries listed where the voice support needs to be there. We are also listing any language that's going to be apart from English, so that if there is a need to implement a voice solution, we then have a quick turnaround. And reason why process definition workshop is the best platform to actually capture those requirements. But before we reach there, Puneet, we are listing out all the questions that we would be looking ahead to ask the Air Liquide participants. We are going to be sending out that list and keeping it handy by next week, so that we give a week and a half time to the Air Liquide participants to look at those questions and be aware of our readiness, because we have already studying the existing DTPs and the due diligence reports. So we are going to do it in both the approach: cross-check our solution, come back with questions, and revalidate language, countries, voice, non-voice solutions during the process definition workshop.
Okay. So Shanak, I know you need to leave. Are we continuing with the meeting or are we stopping it here?
I can stay back for another 5 minutes. I've just pinged the other group, and I am happy to share my screen where I have the project report handy. I was just trying to start sharing in the HRO report. So let me just pull this one up.
Okay. So just before you leave, Shanak, just questions, right? One is BCP. If I'm understanding correctly, is there's a deadline by which Infosys needs to share the BCP plan with us. I think it was X number of days after the contract. Can we just make sure we are aware of that and there is progress happening?
Okay. I haven't really heard anything on that, but now having said that, this is something I'm just taking on note, so that by end of this week, I'll revert to you specifically on the BCP, considering the contract is signed.
Yeah. So there are internal discussions taking place also. So the expectation from you is BCP for the in case the Infosys site goes down or there's other things, right? There's a separate discussion going on BCP on systems and stuff like that. That's an internal air liquid thing. The second one is if you can show the project timeline again. Is I want to understand whether we have any buffers, right? Because having done multiple projects like this is, you know, things shift because of people unavailability, ops fires and stuff like that. Is what's the buffer that we have? Not on this diagram, but there was another one which had by process. There were timelines for avoiding closing period and stuff like that, right? I think Lintang, you were sharing it before where we were talking about the split of R to R.
Oh, you're talking about the PD calendar that we were that spreadsheet.
Yes, the PD calendar.
Okay, I'll pull that up. But since I've just already started presenting this, can I take a quick couple of minutes to give you a view of the hiring progress that we are making? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So, and I would send this document out. The first time we are showcasing this particular view, we've split that into a finance and HRO. And we've also, I know we have already had the opportunity to talk on the HRO part of it, but overall within finance, you would have the P2P, the AP part, then the AR part, and of course the GL treasury tax. And this has about the control, we're also onboarding the quality resources. Now, when I say onboarded, this is really where we have already onboarded the resources. That's as part of the final statement. You have all the leads that have already joined the team. We have certain members already. Amit Deb, who is to be Rajeshwar, who is managing go-to-pay. We have Swapnil for our they are being identified both liquid account. When I talk about in-progress, it's a combination of when the candidate has been selected, offer has been already rolled out. So we are waiting for the resource to onboard us. And open would be somewhere where the interview is in progress or we haven't really, got a suitable profile. Then there are hiring drives happening. So the primary focus clearly is onto the finance part of it. But within finance, of course, the R2R, the GL part, the KT starts around mid of October. So the focus is to have the suitable candidates onboarded with us for AP and AR well before the KT start date. And what I talk about the KT start date would be KT, although it's going to be starting from around 8th September, I would like to actually have them onboarded by end of July. Then I would use the month of August to use the time to onboard them with the outcome of the process definition workshop, where we would have the list of the ERPs and the tools and application, have them access to those particular tools in a test environment so that when the knowledge transfer starts, they are not only aware of the Air Liquid business, they're aware about the process definition report outs. They already have the basic set of accesses, all the access to the ecosystem, and understands the org chart and the hierarchy, and then they start the knowledge transfer well secured from 8th of September. So that's how the dates have been aligned over here. Same way we have for HR. And when you see overall, so we already have Pradesh, the tower lead, the ops tower lead already with us, as much as Sailesh is there for HR. And we have Pramod Kumar for procurement. That's on a different day. So that's the progress we will track week on week basis, and we'll keep providing you with the feedback. But as you have seen, we've already not only onboarded more than 20 folks, we are also sent out the offers for around 13 of them. We are still identifying internal resources, and we are primarily focusing onto the AP and AR to begin with. R2R takes a bit of time looking at the complexity of the project. Any questions?
Yeah. So a couple of things, and not a question, just a comment for both you and Lintang. Lintang, we need to start finding a way to publish this, but also publish the other side of it in Lisbon. Right? There must be a regular communication saying, so if first, what is the notice period in Lisbon? So if someone resigns, we should get a trigger pretty quickly and be able to take action on this to be able to tell Shaunak saying, look, we've got a resignation in Lisbon. We are not going to backfill. Has this resource already been recruited, or do we need to make it a priority as part of the open positions to interview that and close that out very quickly? Yeah. So
Okay.
without people, the migration will not happen, right? So let's make sure we are on top of this, and we are sharing this data quite transparently with the HR team and George in Lisbon, as well as Shaunak saying, look, this is the situation in Lisbon. Hopefully there's no attrition and we can progress as planned. But for whatever reason attrition picks up, we should know when the person is scheduled to leave. And if we need to then advance either hiring or handovers, we can sit down and discuss and plan for it.
Sure. Do we have like a retention?
We have, if we so one is we are not expecting any attrition because nobody's job is at risk, right? So they've all been guaranteed jobs. So if they leave, it's normal attrition. It's not because the work is moving.
Okay.
And therefore there is no separate retention bucket of funds that has been carved out for this. But if we have to, we will get access to it. But as much as possible, let's manage it.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is not a typical migration where jobs are at risk.
Mm. And the question to Shaunak?
No, that it was a comment, right? Let's make sure this is
It's a great point actually, because often we lose sight of two things. One is any change in the scope creeping in, that can be a removal and an addition, or maybe preponement or postponement. The other being the exit of key personnel. And it is around from the beginning of the project. If we have 100% clarity, it just helps us to mitigate certain risk, which are low-hanging fruits. So I'm glad that Puneet, you brought that up. It's going to be part of our checklist also, because often, and let's be very transparent over here, there are going to be surprises, wherein there would be some movements of the key personnel, and not even related to the scope coming over to Infosys. For all of those, we have actually ensured that the immediate focus shifts over there. We put in a seasoned resource, maybe put on somebody on a war footing. If an external resource hasn't yet been hired, or maybe a very good resource but having a 90-day notice period, I would really need to pull up somebody from the current engagement, because for Pradesh and Abhishek, he needs to have a steady state on time. So these are the information which will help us to make those adjustments. I'm glad we are aligned on that. I'll also put this one as one of the key areas to watch out for. Apart from the BCP that I'm going to come back to you, and looking at the language and the country supported revalidation of the scope and voice and non-voice, this is another area that will keep us busy till the time we go live with all the sub processes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or your question on Arabic, do you also need for other language or only specific for Arabic?
Right now, we're looking for Arabic, because that's the resource that we are going to be hiring from India. For the French resource, we are already having it from Poland, which is fairly easier to find in the local market. For Arabic, the feedback that we receive from the hiring team is that let's be very clear about, is it only read and write or the spoken? Because as you understand, somebody coming with a finance skill set with the ability to read, write, and speak would be a different area compared to only read and write, compared to a ranked newcomer but knowing how to speak and write in that language. So to ensure we have the right resource, we thought that this is the right time to ask those basic questions or revalidate them.
Okay. And the
So,
second question?
sorry, Lintang, just on that point, sorry to interrupt. It may be worth going back to the Lisbon team and seeing for language support today, what is the level of person they have and what activity do they do?
Is
right? So
a native speaker. The we already talked for HR, but not finance yet. But for HR, they have like Arabic person, so they can speak right and
uh, correct. So it's not the level of speaking; it's what's the complexity of the process,
okay,
right? So if the process is not complex, that means it doesn't need finance knowledge, as an example, then the recruitment will be slightly easier. But if you're reviewing journal entries and you need to speak Arabic and read Arabic, you're asking for a much more knowledgeable, experienced resource.
understand. I think for finance, definitely is need the accountant. Even English also need to have the accounting
Yeah,
background.
may not always be the case. So, example for
Okay,
callback, you might need an
yeah,
Arabic
callback
speaker.
master data. Mm. I have a question on the hiring from the Infosys side.
Mhm.
I don't know how is the agreement, but from my past experience,
Mhm.
normally from our side, we will receive like the details of the background of the person that you hire just to understand their their experience and how many years, and because during the process, what we found that the person is not having the right competency for the position, and it's actually slow down the transition process because the person is not capable enough
Right. No,
from
take your
your
feedback.
side. And yeah,
So it's what you're summarizing is to have a view of the resources that's getting onboarded with a view of the relevant experience, what background that's coming from. I think that's a very fair ask because it's not only from an air liquid perspective, at a program level, all the hiring that is being done by the hiring team and also the internally identified resources that's coming through. We do have our laundry list of having the resource details with the overall experience. If it's a person coming with a tax or treasury expertise, or is it going to be a general ledger or a mix of both? So that's a metrics that we also maintain in-house. Because remember one thing, one of the process definition workshop would be to look at skill set that is going to be really required is the transition. To go back and relate that with the resources that we are onboarding. Sometimes we find there's some mismatch. So we go back and make this. How do we do it? We have our list of resources with overall experience and the area of expertise. More than happy to get you a visibility of that once we have most of the members getting onboarded. And we would use that as a reference point during the process definition workshop. That here is a particular area where we need a niche skill that we haven't factored earlier. So I'll come back to you on that, Lincoln.
yes, please. Thank you so much.
Because you and I and Puneet, we all want that we have the right set of resources. There would still be one of cases where it will bring up some surprises, but a very simple look at the overall experience and the area of expertise would help us to understand whether we are actually moving in the right direction and need some course correction or not. Very fair ask. I'm going to have that details. It's the initial phase, but as we build, I'll also will get you a view of the overall the expertise area of the resources coming on board.
Yeah, and also actually during the call before about the IT equipment, right? I
Mm.
think for some of the resources, maybe laptop needed, but for some of them, maybe more to the desktop. The reason is during my past experience as well. So the person is hiring, but then after got the laptop, never come back. And then the HR is checking and go to the house of the person, but then based on the HR records and the card, apparently is a fake address. So in that
So the
times
way the contract is drawn,
we
it
lost.
is all the processors at a processing level of a transaction. They are the members who are solution to have a dual monitor. So
Dual
if I
monitor.
am the person who's going to be processing a freight in or invoice, or going to do the cash application, or going to do a journal entry, I'm going to
Mhm.
be having a dual monitor put up in a docking station in the Infosys office. Every user, when he gets onboarded, will have a laptop. That's one thing, and we have remote ways of monitoring that. For the rest of the support teams, let's say my team, the transition team, or the PD team, or for that matter, you have so many other support teams. We would not be having a dual monitor because that would be for the run resources. So there are checks and balances to ensure that, and that's a standard process for all engagements and mostly the transactional engagements. Punit, see your hand raised.
Yeah, so again, I think Linka is asking good questions, but at the same time, we have no intention of micromanaging you guys. You guys have done this multiple times before, and uh, I'm sure you'll take all the necessary precautions to make sure that the service, you know, remains of a high quality. Yeah. So that is the principle that I will be operating on. Is I'm expecting you guys to recruit good candidates, and because you are responsible for the service delivery.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yep.
I'm not going to get into micromanaging who gets recruited and why somebody got recruited, and if they fail to show up. That's why we have you guys, right?
I am glad that we are 100% aligned with this. At the end of the day, we both need to have less excitements and more, what you call it, can never be noiseless. There are certain checks and balances. And I'm glad
Yeah.
you're asking this question because it just shows the investment from both our
Mm.
sides. And there can be something that might be we are doing it at an Infosys level, but we haven't really spoken about it. Glad if this
Mm.
question come through. It gives me an opportunity to go back if I don't answer or review, give you that view. Okay.
Cool. And in the same way, Shaunak, if the team feels that there are individuals who are on BAU and don't have two monitors, but they need it and it'll help the work, just raise it to us, right? At the end of the day, the important thing is we need to maintain a high level of service. Yeah, the monitor costs will be minimal in the whole scheme of things.
Absolutely. And as of now, we just had a call with Victor on the other side from IT. And he also actually agreed to the fact that till last week, I could sense that there wasn't much of a visibility and nobody was really talking about the BSC transition, but mostly the focus was on the IT transition, wherein, we were not talking about the headsets and the dual monitors. So I've given a glide path for finance, HR, and procurement, cut through Pune, Cluj, and Dalian. Very less numbers for Poland and Dalian, by the way. And that I provided both from a dual monitor perspective. That's all going to be the processor level and the headset perspective as well, because already the procurement of the AL laptops are in process. And with that, we also have tried to come back and figured out, the number of seats that we have in Pune. Do we have sufficient, charging points and stuff like that? Very basic, very internal. But the reason I'm calling this out, because now is the time. There is no dumb question, because tomorrow I don't want to land up where I have dual monitor, one docking station and a laptop. I need 4 charging points, but I only have 2. Maybe nobody thought about it because IT transition doesn't have any dual monitors. So if there is not going to be need for some more assets, it's only fair that we come back the right time, because here we are going to be operating jointly. So these are all happening parallelly right now, along with the whitelisting activity. There are some risk which has been called out, and we are trying to get that risk and approved from the right quarter. And I've already spoken that with Olivier. If there is some go ahead, we need a separate one-liner from Air Liquid. We're going to come back to Olivier. But we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We are trying to mimic what's happening in IT transition and get these things done. But glad I got a chance. There are so many other things happening in the parallel. Okay. I'm going to be sending out this particular document, and Linton, thanks for setting up the PD kickoff. We will have probably the clarity of the start and the end time by the next day, if you can get us that by 28th. I'm going to come back to you, Puneet, with a template on a change comms, if that's going to be useful. And of course, get more clarity on callback and the voice and the assumptions from Ritu based on the current considerations. Okay.
Okay from my side. Mhm.
Punit, you good? You happy? Okay, cool. Um, I'll probably drop out. I need to just jump onto the other call, which is also on Air Liquid. That's an hiring call that's happening. I need to go and ask some tough questions. But thanks for giving me this time. We're going to be talking maybe next week. If there is something very important, I'm going to call out directly and to get that help. But thank you so much
No
for all
worries.
that supported
Yeah,
so far.
thank you so much.
Bye
Have a
bye.
good day. Bye bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.